Hello and welcome. I am Duskfire6, and today I'm going to be reading you Twilight Sneaky-Gokenshadow by Sneaky-gokenshadow. This fic is 3 chapters long, and the chapters are relatively short. But, this is a fic that deals with Philly Twilight Sparkle. She was in the middle of a test. She ended up getting sick, couldn't complete the test, and so this is basically her trying to, I guess one should call it cheating the test to complete it. But meh. So it takes Twilight down a route that we never see her go, that not many people would ever see her go down. So this is an interesting fic. So yeah. As usual, link will be in the description to the fic itself and to the writer's page. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let's get to the fic. Twilight looked at the clock on the wall for the 20th time. It was 12:45. If she was ever going to do the thing that she couldn't believe she was thinking of doing, she would have to start doing it right now, or she would never have enough time to accomplish it. She knew for a fact that it was technically the wrong thing to do, but a chance as mind-numbingly good as this one didn't come along often, and technicality was irrelevant when it came to real-life mortality, right? Right? Her face screwed up in determination. She edged herself out of her desk and snaked her way along the floor, moving as quickly and quietly as physically possible, hoping to the moon no one would notice her absence, and hoping to Celestia none of the joking ponies in the corner would make too loud a noise. They were whispering, of course, but every now and then a slightly less mature one would slip into a tone of voice much too loud for the given situation before being scolded by several hissing whispers. She continued to creep along the floor, creeping past the bored pony fooling with her pencil, past the two fillies chatting about some new toy they both bought, past the one colt with the black mane who never talked to any pony ever. She was almost there. Almost. At last she reached the corner cabinet. A shrill burst of laughter rang through the room for a second, before being quickly silenced, making Twilight's eyes widen. She jerked her head back to the joking students. 3 of them had shoved their hooves into a fourth's mouth. They all apprehensively looked toward the teacher, as did Twilight. By some kind of miracle, he still snored softly at his desk, though it looked like he had shifted slightly. The colts went back to joking with each other. Twilight let out a breath she had been holding. She didn't expect to make it this far. In fact, she didn't expect to ever get a chance like this in the first place. Her teacher was not at all the kind of pony to fall asleep on the job. Something must have happened to him at home. She looked up at the cabinet and immediately frowned. It was much, much taller than she had anticipated. She wouldn't be able to reach the top of it without something to stand on. "Curses," she whispered, pounding on the floor lightly with a hoof. She looked around the classroom. There had to be something she could use. She looked from corner to corner to corner. Her face fell into dismay when she saw the one and only stepping stool stood right in the corner where the group of colts continued to joke and play with each other. She sighed. She sighed and crept her way back toward them. That was this guy's got fragments all over the place. I'm a bit of a grammar Nazi. Deal with it. Okay, let's see. When she got within 15 hoof steps of them, she stood still. 3 of them were trying desperately hard not to laugh, while the 4th was blushing like a tomato. Probably said something dumb as hell. She gulped. Slowly, carefully, and quietly, she crept past their desk. Their snorts and giggles covered the sound of her hoof steps. She reached the edge of the room and there it was, the step stool that was so much more than a mere step stool. The step stool that represented hope. Hope that she wouldn't have to fail. I hope she doesn't mean the entire class. Hope that she still had a chance. She grabbed it with her mouth and yanked at it. It squeaked as it slid across the floor, making the 4 colts look in her direction. "Hey, what's the egghead doing here?" one of them said. Twilight immediately let go of the step stool. "Nothing," she said, backing up. Another cult smirked as he looked at Twilight, looked at the stool, and then to Twilight. Yeah, he looked at Twilight and then to Twilight. I'm looking at you twice. Okay. It don't look like nothing to me," he said, stepping down from the chair. "Well," Twilight tried to think of something to say. "It is nothing. I'm not doing anything, Brash." Brash stepped toward the stool, smirking at Twilight. The first time I read that surprised the hell out of me that he named the pony Brash, just so he could do that. I feel like it was just for that reason. "Well then," he said, grabbing the stool with a hoof. "You won't be needing this then, will you?" He pulled it toward himself, making Twilight flinch reach for it. He smirked. "So you want to tell me what you need this for, Egghead?" "It's nothing. Just give it to me," she whispered loudly, trying to reach for it, but he pulled it away again. "What do you need it for?" he said. Twilight stood there, considering her options. After about half a minute, she finally sighed and lowered her head. "I need it to finish my test," she said. "Finish your test? You mean cheat?" "I'm not cheating," she screamed loudly, but instantly regretted it. They all looked toward the front of the room. The teacher snorted at his desk, and then shifted his position again, but remained asleep. "I'm not cheating," Twilight repeated quieter. "I never got to finish the test because I got sick." I know how that feels. Okay, no, I don't, because Twilight is like an overachiever. Brash ignored her statement, as if it didn't matter. I gotta get water. I got mucus in my throat, so it's messing with my voice a bit. "Well, if you want to use this thingy here to cheat, it's called a step stool, Brash." He slid the stool slightly with a hoof. "We're gonna need some kind of payment. You know what I'm saying?" Twilight looked dumbfounded. I was reading Clockfix yesterday. You do not realize what my mind just came up with. Oh God. "No, I don't," she said, backing up slightly. "Well, here, let me spell it out for you," he said, stepping forward. "If you want to use this stool to cheat on your test, I'm not cheating, I'm finishing." "Whatever. If you want to finish your test," he said, making huge air quotes. God damn it. Being sick sucks. Okay, he said, making huge air quotes. "Then you're gonna have to finish our tests too." Twilight's eyes widened in horror. "No, that would really be cheating." "Then it looks like I can't give you this, Egghead," he said, pulling the stool back toward himself. Little asshole. "Twilight is my waifu, I'll fight you, son." 1v1 me, bitch. Twilight stared at him. His buddies had joined him, and they were all looking at her with dangerous smirks. A moment passed, and then another, and then another. She looked towards the clock. Even though it was far away, she could feel the weight of each and every tick it made. She looked back at the colts. They still smirked, and she gulped. "All right," she said, turning away. "I'll help you with your tests, but we have to be quick. There's not much time." "That's more like it," Brash said, patting her on the back. He turned to his friends. "You heard her voice. Let's get this stool to the other side, pronto." And that was Chapter 1 of Twilight Sneaky, The Bargain, and on to Chapter 2. I'm reading this all in one sitting because this is actually a relatively short story. Just over 3,000 words in all. Not too many. Actually, let me stop and see what time it is. While their combined intelligence was below subpar when it came to classroom learning, the four cults were certified geniuses when it came to sneaking stuff around. They carried the stool toward the tall cabinet without making so much as a sound, though they did get a few odd looks from the desk-laden ponies. Students. Yep. Twilight followed them, trying as hard as she could to avoid thinking about what she was about to do. Maybe if she didn't think about it, she'd actually be able to do it. That made sense, right? Matter over mind, or something like that. Mind over matter. Hang on. Better. The cults placed the stool at the base of the cabinet and backed away. "Alright, Egghead, do your thing," Brash said. Twilight stared at the stool for an uncomfortable amount of seconds. That it no longer looked like the pure representation of hope and opportunity would be the understatement of the century. Every single splinter of the wood on it felt like a chunk of her soul being sliced away from her. "Well, hurry up already. I thought you said there wasn't much time," Brash said. Twilight looked at the clock. It was 12:53. Wait, no, it was 12:54. Her eyes widened as she realized she had 6 minutes to complete 5 tests. She didn't have time to think. She hardly had time at all. She clambered onto the stool clumsily and jerked the cabinet handle open with the small amount of levitation magic she needed. The original text she had, but we all know that Twilight's way more powerful. For those of you who don't, Twilight's way more powerful. And there they were, right next to the bin filled with pencils. The unfinished tests. The oh-so-important tests. The ridiculously simple tests. For Twilight, that is. And then again, these tests consist of simple math, so... Oh. She rapidly searched through them, one by one, looking at the names until at last she found the ones she was looking for. She lifted them up with her magic and took a look at them. She stared. As she stared, she began to notice details about the inked pieces of paper. Oh my god, why am I going so bad right now? That she had never noticed before. The letters were so dull-looking, for one thing. So plain and uninteresting. So dark. And the paper, it was so cold, so sterile, so icky. And the tests themselves, they had no color. They were just black and white. Black and white. Black and white. Black and... "I can't do this," Twilight said, placing the test back onto the pile. She closed the cabinets. "Oh, I can't do this." Let me reread that. "I can't do this," Twilight said, placing the test back onto the pile. She closed the cabinets and started her way down from the stool, but a hoof stopped her. "I don't think so," Brash said. She turned and stared at him. He stared right back and smirked. "What do you think would happen if I woke up the teacher right now?" he said. Twilight's eyes widened. "We'd all get in trouble. All of us. Even you," she said. "That may be true, but I've been in trouble tons of times. You, on the other hoof, you haven't been in trouble at all." He zeroed in on her face. "I wonder what the teachers would say if someone as immaculate as you were taught." Damn, big word for someone of his intelligence. You know, since their combined intelligence was subpar when it came to book learning. Twilight stood there for a moment, hardly able to believe what was happening. She tentatively stepped back up and stepped back up the step stool and opened the cabinet. Damn it. Her unfinished test lay on the top of the pile, staring directly at her. It looked so wrong, but there was nothing she could do. She magically levitated a pencil from the bin and took a look at the first question. I'm going to do a voice that I haven't done in years. Leave in the comments whether or not you like it, because I literally stopped doing it like late 8th, and now I'm high school junior, so yeah. Tell me what you think of it. There it goes. Gonna get some water before I start. Joe loves to do honest work, so today he's decided to help his father collect bottles for recycling. He's found 32 bottles in his backyard and 53 bottles in his front yard. How many bottles has Joe found in all? That was easy enough. 85. Twilight wrote down the answer on all 5 tests. She looked at the next question. Twain is a very honorable stallion. Every time he does something wrong, he writes it down on a notepad. At the end of the week, he apologizes to every pony he's wronged. If Dwayne did something wrong 4 times each day for 5 days, how many times did he do something wrong? Also easy. 20. Twilight wrote down the answer. She looked at the next question. Emily is not very good at taking tests, but she has figured out that she will pass the class if she can get at least 7 questions right on her final. During her final, she only gets 6 question rights, so she decides to cheat to get that last question. How wrong is Emily? What? Twilight shook her head and blinked, and looked at the question again. During Emily's final, there are a total of 10 questions. What percent of the questions does she need to get right in order to pass? That was easy. 70%. That was easy, too. 70%. Twilight wrote down the answer. She looked at the next question. Twilight Sparkle is a very studious student who would never think of cheating, but today she has decided to cheat. If she has been nothing but studious for 3 years, how much of a cheater is she? What the hey? Twilight shook her head again and looked at the question. If Twilight Sparkle... Damn it. And there it goes. Shit, I'm gonna have to get more water between chapters. If Twilight Sparkle cheated on 2 tests every day for 20 days, how many times did she cheat? This couldn't be right. This was... Twilight shook her head again and blinked several times. She looked back at the test. Twilight Sparkle used to be a studious and honorable pony, but now she has decided to help 4 of her fellow students cheat. There are a total of 10 questions on a test. If she gets 1 point taken off for every question she helps a student answer, how many points will she lose? Tears formed in Twilight's eyes. Hey, what's taking you so long up there? Brash said. Hurry it up! Twilight sniffed and looked at and shook her head as hard as she could. She looked at the question. Tate is a friendly colt who loves to share his toys with others. He always tries to give each pony an equal amount of toys. If he is playing with 4 other ponies and he has 40 toys, how much of a better pony is he than Twilight Sparkle? Ooh, burn. Without a second thought, Twilight screamed. She screamed as loudly as she possibly could and held the scream with her until her lungs ran out of air. The shrill sound echoed through the room. The few students not curious enough to be already looking at the cabinet shot their heads toward it. The teacher awoke. What in Celestia's name is going on here? He said. Twilight took a deep breath. I'm a cheater. She burst into tears as the 4 colts bolted for their desks. You 4, stop! They froze. He stared at them. Detention, he said. They lowered their heads. The teacher turned his attention to Twilight, whose eyes were already red with tears. Twilight Sparkle, he said. He had stared at her for a second before sighing. Beat me in my office after school. Well, shit seems to be going down, so I'm going to stop recording real quick. Check the time that I've on recording, see if I need to add more time to the recording, and then I will read Chapter 3, The Teacher. Twilight looked up at the door to her teacher's office and sighed heavily. It was covered to the brim in many different kinds of stars, which were one of her favorite things to look at. They would have looked pretty magical if she was here for any other reason. She cracked open the door and stared inside the room. All she could see from her viewpoint was a small desk with a window behind it. Didn't look like any pony was in there, so she pushed the door open enough to inch her way into the room, then closed it gently. A bit late, aren't we, Twilight? Twilight eeked and quickly turned around. Her teacher stood in the far corner of the room, staring at her with heavy eyes. Fucking James Bond shit. Didn't I tell you to meet me after school? It's been nearly 20 minutes since it ended, he said. Twilight couldn't think of anything to say. Have a seat, Twilight, he said, gesturing toward a cushion at the end of his desk. She trundled over to it and sat. She slowly walked to the other end of the desk and sat down. Damn! I'm sorry. He opened a drawer and pulled out some pieces of paper with his magic. After looking at them for a few seconds, he placed them down on the desk in front of Twilight. She gulped. So, these are the tests you tried to cheat on, correct? Yes, Twilight said. And cheating didn't work very well for you, did it? No, Twilight said. Twilight looked away, trying to blink the water out of her eyes. It didn't. Do you know why that is? He said. No, Twilight said, continuing to look away. Twilight, he said. You're a very bright student, possibly the brightest I've ever had. Are you honestly telling me that that lovely little mind of yours hasn't come up with some explanation why you couldn't cheat on these tests? Twilight blinked and looked up at him. He was smiling, which was odd. Because, she thought for a second, because you put a spell on the tests? Correct, he said. And do you know what kind of spell I put on the tests? Twilight looked at the ground for a moment before looking back up at him. A cheat detecting spell? No, he said, shaking his head melancholically. Is that even a word? Melancholically. What the fuck? Okay. Frankly, I don't have much of a problem with cheaters. Twilight's brow furrowed quizzically. He smiled at her. I have found in my years of teaching, he said, that the type of pony who cheats on tests tends to be the type of that would never have found the knowledge useful in the first place. Then what kind of spell did you put on the test? She said, sniffling a bit. You still don't know. She shook her head. Yes, the teacher grabs her head and shakes it. Oh God. My mind's in the gutter for some reason. Tell me something, Twilight. Did you want to cheat on your test? Well, I did cheat, so yeah, I think so. I'm not asking if you did cheat on your test. I'm asking if you wanted to, he said. She stared at him. What do you mean? I did it, so that means I wanted to, right? Does it? She stood there for a moment, thinking. No, she said. The teacher smiled and looked up and stood up, and walked toward the window. I've been teaching at the school for around 20 years now. Damn, son. And nearly every class I teach has yielded at least one student like yourself. He turned back to her. Ambitious, precocious, eager to learn every lesson and complete every test. He walked around the desk toward Twilight. And normally they do complete all their tests. They learn all they possibly can and get the best grades. But every odd year or so, one of them, for one reason or another, misses a class or two. This drives them, shall we say, slightly mad, and makes them do things they usually regret later. He tilted his head toward the pile of papers on the desk. The spell that I put on tests is one as old and simple as time itself. All it does is prevent a pony from doing something that they really don't want to do. If you had wanted to cheat on the test, you would have succeeded. I would? He placed a hoof on her shoulder. Yes, Twilight, you would. And since you didn't succeed, I'm not going to give you any bad marks up for your actions. Twilight's eyes sparkled. I see what you did there. Really? Her teacher nodded. Just make sure you never cheat again, he said, winking. Honestly, if you wanted to retake the test, you could have just asked me. Twilight's eyes widened in disbelief. Really? I'm not an unreasonable pony, so... I'm not an unreasonable pony. Twilight sat there for a moment as he got up, walked around her, and opened the door. Now, if you please, I have a lot of business to attend to. I'll see you next class, he said. Twilight nodded at him and got up and walked out the door. It closed gently behind her. Before walking away, she took one last look at the stars painted on it. They looked magical. And that was Twilight Sneaky by Gokenshadow. What? Okay. Other fix. Good story. So, like usual, there will be a link in the description to the fic itself and to the writer's page. And leave in the comments a suggestion to the next fanfic that I should read, or yeah, whatever. And I will put up another one next week.